Hi everyone, welcome to Osquery office hours. Anyhow, I guess let's go ahead. Announcements, highlights since the last meeting. I don't think I've got anything. I'm a little quiet. Any questions, issues, PRs people want to discuss? The intent of this section is to provide a time for community members to bring up anything outside the agenda. Okay, so moving right along. The agenda item that someone has written down is the 5.0 release. Seems worth talking about, probably the biggest thing on our plates. So where are we with 5.0?
Yeah, I just wanted to ask, what do we need to kind of move and release on all platforms? Like for macOS, I know the paths update needs to happen. That's trivial. That needs approval.
So we need Mac OS paths update. Last time I looked at that PR, it was not done. Do you want me to look at it again?
Yeah, so me and Teddy were going back and forth a little bit. The plan was merge it in, let's get CI green, and then nail down what paths need to be happen. And then I think we didn't get a chance to sync up. And I was hoping he would be here today, but I can update the paths. It's like a 2-line change.
I mean, if you update the paths, I'll review it, and then we can merge it.
Okay.
We can always iterate.
Yeah, exactly.
So I took a quick stab at just writing the things down that I could think of into our minutes here. So there's the macOS paths. There's the Linux paths. There's the Windows code signing cert. And there's Facebook and various profile names. I think if you take a look at the macOS paths one, I'll review it. Charvel to update, Ceph to review.
Sounds good.
Linux paths, I don't think anyone has stepped up on that one yet, but it's roughly the same work as what Charvel is doing. Windows code signing cert, I really need to try making phone calls, and I haven't done it yet. I'm sorry. I'm still fighting with certificate agencies. Facebook and various profile names. Teddy put up a PR a couple weeks ago, which didn't seem quite correct. Maybe I'll try and cut a new PR. I think it should be pretty easy.
Yeah, I think there's a little bit of overlap. But yeah, if you can do that, that's okay.
I'll take a quick
rebase or.
Well, I'll do it in the Osquery repo, not in the packaging repo.
Yeah.
Because we've got a bunch of them in the Osquery repo, and I suspect that there's a good chance we'll miss something or we'll just kind of have to do them all and run through some beta cycles on it all. Those are the only things I know of. What's on our milestones?
Excuse me, I'm first time on this kind of meeting. Are you planning on version 5 to support natively Apple Silicon?
No, I don't think that's being planned in version 5. I don't think anyone has. I think that would be follow-up after 5.0, perhaps.
So welcome aboard. Glad to see a new person here. So I don't think, so no one is currently working on Apple Silicon support. As far as I know, Rosetta works, and no one's really taken on the task of going through and porting all of the third-party dependencies. 5.0 is primarily around breaking changes. So a bunch of the things that will change the code signing certs and change the installation paths are getting lumped into a 5.0 release. I don't think we would bump the version number for Apple Silicon support. And really, anytime someone wanted to contribute PRs to further M1 support, I think we would merge them.
Okay. I ask because our product was recently updated to natively support Apple Silicon. It's mean on Activity Monitor, all our companies now Apple market except Osquery, of course, and Osquery extension because you launch Osquery extension, it will be also translated mode.
Can you see what your product is?
It's a Sophos antivirus Mac endpoint.
Okay. Yeah, we actually were internally here at Trail of Bits, we were working on a plan to estimate the effort to do M1 support, Apple Silicon support. So it's not on the roadmap for the project yet, but we've been at least trying to figure out what ballpark estimate, like effort it would require. So it's pre-planning stages, but I think it's on our agenda. I haven't confirmed yet, though.
Okay, thanks. Because I try to find any information on forums or on Osquery related.
Yeah, we have one. We have one open issue, but to kind of outline the work required, we have a couple of dozen dependencies, and they're vendor dependencies. The build tool chain we use is not the same as the tool chain that they build with upstream. So we have to go through individually every library and make sure that it builds with Apple Silicon. And so that has to be all done at once before we can kind of do the second stage, which is knowing that it builds, trying to confirm that everything works the way it used to work so that there's no new bugs. So there's a couple of things there that have to be kind of worked out. So Apple Silicon support is at least a few months away at least.
Okay. It's probably, there's a little bit of piecemeal work that can happen, and that we can actually, we can merge one dependency at a time as we add the configuration.
I know we did exactly the same process. We all third-party libraries should be rebuilt at universal binary format. Blah, blah. Yeah, it's annoying. I know. Okay, thanks a lot.
Sure. I was just looking up whether we had other 5.0 blockers. I don't think so. I think the only things we really wanted to sort of get to were all the profile names, and the paths were the big, and the code signing certs are kind of the big breaking changes. So as soon as we get those done and start sort of squinting at some betas, I'll try and put up a PR for the profile names and things. Yeah. Other things people want to talk about?
So this is not a blocker, mainly nice to have a bug fix, basically. I recently opened a request around fixing other issues with the watcher not correctly stopping the worker during service restart or similar.
This is a PR 7204.
Yeah, exactly. So I would imagine this might get reviewed by the time everything else is done. But yeah, just mentioning that.
So let's see. As ever, we're not holding anything, or we're not merging things, right? Anything that merges is amazing, and we should merge as much as we want. Yeah. If you think we should hold the release for this, that we can totally talk about that too. I don't, or if you want to just, I guess realistically, we're probably not going to cut the release in the next 2 weeks. So,
yeah,
try to get this reviewed and merged.
Yeah, again, would be nice. We have a customer interested in this, and in general, I think that it is obviously a useful bug fix. But yeah,
is there someone who would be appropriate to review this? Generally, what I'd throw at Teddy.
Yeah.
Here, I'll just assign it to Teddy, and maybe he'll review it.
So it shouldn't introduce issues. It might not be, well, I've written something in the pull request, but it might not be a full fix for the issue itself, although it seemed to be enough for the customer to not see the issue.
Mm-hmm. Okay, well, cool. We could just look at some recent PRs, although, I don't know if that's the best use of our time, or if anyone wants to speculate about anything exciting. Well, if no one's got any other agenda items, we could just call it early this week. Guess we could hang out in case someone shows up with any questions. It's still pretty early. Frank, if you're talking to us, you're muted.
Frank, it doesn't show you as muted, but we still can't hear you.
Probably double muted.
Yeah, it's you're not muted on Google Meet, but maybe you're.
What about now?
Gotcha.
Okay, cool. Yeah, Joe, I just got invited for this for the first time. What is this meeting about?
This is the fortnightly Osquery office hours. It's a place for the Osquery developers and broader community members to talk about status and community and what's going on. I'm not sure who invited you. You're welcome, of course.
Actually, my boss invited me. He said, "Oh yeah, if we are dealing with Osquery for our XDR purposes, maybe it's a good idea to be on board there and listen to what they have to say."
Yeah, we with Frank with same team.
Well, welcome aboard.
Ah, Demetrius. Oh, hi.
Yeah, and I already Frank asked about native support for Apple Silicon. Do you have any other questions related to Osquery?
Oh wow! I should have known that. I would have dug out all my catalog of wishes and stuff and wonders and.
No, this is a fairly informal meeting. You're welcome to drop in, ask questions. Generally, there's an agenda and minutes doc. If you know them ahead of time, you could write them down. It gets shared on the office hours channel on the Osquery Slack. But yeah, we're pretty informal. So, you got any questions, you can just ask. Anything you want to talk about, any hopes and dreams, the usual.
Hopes and dreams. What I run into is by using is I found out that I was wishing for maybe the logging being more controllable when it comes to messages, or having in the Osquery logs that can be generated the standard out have some kind of rotation mechanism in place, so they don't fill up over time like gigantic log files. It's always written to the end and can keep going. So that would be one of my wish lists for the future of things.
I've got two answers for you.
Yeah.
One of them is that Osquery's general stance is that logging is the responsibility of some system utility. So on Linux, you'd use systemd. On Mac OS, you would use new syslogd, I think. I don't remember what
so
the
they
Mac OS
recommend
one.
using third-party.
The other thing is that as of 4.9.0, we shipped a log rotation function because Windows doesn't have one. So Osquery 4.9 does include a log rotation.
Aha, cool.
Facility.
That's all I ask for. That's great.
Yeah, and we plan to upgrade our Osquery usage to 4.9.0. It means Frank we will have soon.
Cool.
Okay, thanks.
Sure.
It's quiet, yes.
It seems like a quiet week. Normally we're a chattier bunch. But I don't know, this week seems like we're mostly probably all caught up in other things. And I guess I started writing a secure boot table for Osquery, and I think it works, but I think I broke things when I added in a test case. So that PR will probably become a real PR in the next few days. I don't think we're reading EFI vars anywhere else, so I sort of mocked in some EFI var functions.
I have another technical question. Maybe somebody can answer that, why it behaved like it, as I saw that ours behaved. So we used an extension. We had an extension for a while, and it was basically started manually by us before Osquery runs, and then we connect, and all is great and happy. And then we extended our extension to incorporate a logger. And of course, in the Osquery config, we named this logger as the logger to be used. And we still launched our extension manually. But I noticed that when Osquery fires up and says and looks for this logger, says, no, this logger is not registered, and fails to continue its work. So I had to basically resort to the autoload feature for our extension in Osquery to basically say, I need this because it contains my logger, and it seems to be that the autoload processes all this before it continues then with its regular config processing. Is that true, or is there ways around?
It sounds like, sorry, was the question that does the autoload have to complete before the rest of the configuration is
dependency between
loaded?
introducing a logger by registering it versus mentioning the logger already in the Osquery config. Like launching the extension manually as a non-auto-loaded feature. I seem to be not finding the one I introduce, because Osquery processes config, says, hey, I want to use this logger with this name. I don't know this yet, because it has not been launched on our end.
Right.
But when I use auto-load, it seems to load the extension first, does the registration, and then continues processing the config, which includes, of course, the logger name to be used. And then it's already known. So I guess this is how it's designed, right?
Yes, that's right. It's kind of expected that if you're trying to start up with a config plugin or a logger plugin that is not built in, it's coming from an extension, then I believe you have to use extensions autoload, which will cause Osquery to try to load the extensions before it loads up the rest of the config and starts logging.
I think there's got to be something a little, so the Collide approach on that has got to be a little different, right? Because the config comes in via extension at the same time the logger does. So there's probably something there around, like, if the config is also coming into an extension, then it's probably fine, because you're not going to see a chicken and egg thing. But I think it's sort of like Osquery is going to parse the config before your extension loads, so you're dealing with that. If you do want to start it manually, you could always start it on a known socket and then launch Osquery on the same socket. You could create the extension first.
Okay.
I think.
Oh, no,
you may not be guaranteed that the extension is loaded by the time Osquery looks for that, though.
Depends on how you're launching them.
There's also the extensions require flag, I believe, which might allow you to not use autoloads and have Osquery wait for the extension to connect itself. I can't remember exactly the semantics of that, but you might want to take a look at that.
I think the autoload is just working as designed. It works great for us. So yes, I'm happy.
Oh, okay, yeah. Yeah, I think that's as intended, pretty much what you described.
No, it saves us some lines of code to maintaining the life cycle of our own extension, because it's now under Osquery control, which is actually a nice benefit. Another question I have, an interesting question is, Osquery runs as root. We as a security company always are looking hesitant on root processes that run as root. Is there a mode that maybe if you don't get, yes, we won't use it, but can you downgrade it and say, yes, I run it as non-root and I only have access to X amount of tables then that are, is there somewhere a documentation what is available as a non-root OS query?
There's no documentation on that, but you can certainly do so, and that information you have access to will be limited based on whatever the permissions are that the user has.
Oh, okay.
I don't think we could document what you have access to or not because it's too diverse.
Yeah, I guess.
Right, you could run it as non-root, and if you granted that user enough permissions, it would have access to all the same things. So you start, there's a big can of worms. But there's nothing in Osquery itself that requires root access.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, and it will, if you run it without root, the same queries will work. They'll just return different and usually less data.
No, okay. I would think so, yes.
Yeah.
There is actually a little bit of a weirdness that's maybe worth knowing, is that queries that are designed to be joined against users work differently. So there's like places where if you I think Chrome profiles is maybe one, right? Places where you do something like try and look at the Chrome profiles. If you did that with Osquery running as root, you have to join that query against the users table. Like it needs a where clause. But if you were running Osquery as a user, it just inherits from the user environment.
Oh, okay.
So there's a little bit of a weirdness around sometimes there's an extra parameter needed in the case of root, so it knows what user to look at. But generally speaking, you can just do all the same things in both places, and like you'll get back the data you can read.
Okay, good. Is it from my end?
For the 5.0 on Windows, are there any other pending issues related to chocolatey or packaging related? Anyone have any clue or idea?
We talked about whether to move the chocolatey packaging to being MSI based, but I don't think we declared that as a blocker. Just to like, well, if someone wanted to write this, we could do it that way.
Sounds good.
I don't think we've talked about changing the Windows installation paths at all, which maybe would be something we'd want to do. So I'm not aware of anything on the Windows side that would be a breaking change.
Okay.
Nick's probably busy for the same reasons Teddy is. Well, no one's got anything else. We could call it, have 30 minutes back. Anyone doing anything exciting in Osquery land they want to talk about? Zach, you up to anything fun?
One thing that's on my mind is I'm interested in whether we could get performance information on live queries similar to what we get in the Osquery schedule table. I haven't really looked at this much at all. If I remember, basically the way the Osquery schedule table works is when we execute a scheduled query, we pretty much query the processes table and look at how much CPU time and memory was used during the execution of the query. So it seems like a similar approach could be used for live queries, and then it could just be returned. That information could be returned as part of the response. If anyone has thoughts about that, I'd certainly be curious, but I also am not really sure how much time I have to build such things at the moment.
Seems like if we can hook the same mechanism. So I looked at this recently, and the performance stuff, there's like a whole struct that just basically like it gets called into. So using the same logic or refactoring that out seems pretty reasonable. One thing I noticed is that we don't track wall time. We don't track real time on queries. We used to. So there's a column there for the wall time, but it's been set to 0 for several releases. Like maybe since the 3-point-something days. Bringing that back actually would be, I think, quite valuable, because that's usually a simpler proxy than trying to understand what the other columns mean.
Totally. Agreed. Anything is better than nothing. I think the other thing is I've noticed that output bytes is empty often.
Maybe
these
no,
days.
maybe that's the one that's empty. Yeah, okay, that was it. So it got removed. I chased this down through a bunch of PRs to read the commentary on it, and it got removed because it was inaccurate. So where Osquery is measuring it is like before wire compression and before like serialization. So it was like raw output bytes, which would then get serialized into a different number. So it was removed because it was inaccurate due to the serialization overhead. I might have disagreed with that, but that appears to be what's in the commit history.
I see. Yeah, it would be nice to have any proxy. I mean, I think even just giving relative information about
number of rows might be.
Yeah, something like that could be helpful. Although the size of rows can differ massively. But anyway, this stuff is on my mind. If folks have ideas about this, or this is something anyone else is pursuing, it's interesting to hear that you were looking at that stuff.
I was trying to debug. I don't remember. I was trying to debug like why do some queries not always work, and it's like we see issues where queries return lots of data, where lots is megabytes of data. We Collide have seen issues, sometimes because the Collide is running over gRPC, which limits packet size to something not super big. And then also just because when people are on the other side of flaky network connections, you end up seeing like they can never send a 10 meg data packet. So that log just gets stuck in the outbound queue. So I kind of went digging through and seeing if we had any visibility, determined that no, we removed that visibility. We the project removed that visibility. And I think I opened a bug linking to the commit and then put the rock down.
Yeah, we've seen similar concerns as far as logging to various destinations in AWS tend to have 1, 4, 6, or 8 megabyte limits, depending on whether it's depending on which service it is. And in any of those, it seems possible to exceed the limits, and those logs just get dropped right now. Either in Osquery if it's writing directly to something like Firehose or Kinesis, or they get dropped by the fleet server because what are we going to do with them, essentially? Yeah,
the place I've seen this come up most often is probably when people run block lists out of their etc hosts file. That's actually one of them. The other one is if you try and fetch the full installation package install history on a Mac that has gone through several upgrade cycles, that one can get really big. I think those are the only 2 queries I encounter that have prodigious amounts of results. But yeah, it's the same problem, right? As you're just like, what do you do with this data? So I don't know. I agree with you. I think it'd be nice to have any kind of proxy for data size back, and number of rows might be easy.
And then the other thing would be trying to figure out how to make the watchdog apply to live queries.
you or someone else mentioned that some weeks back too.
I guess I've mentioned it over the years. And I think that is probably a more difficult problem because there are also things that will have to be taken into account. Like, I think a TLS server would probably resend queries that have been terminated, and
Wouldn't matter if you blacklisted them.
Yeah,
the watchdog blacklists them.
Yeah, but the watchdog is used to denying queries based on like their scheduled query name, I think, and not based on other. I think there's just like when Osquery starts back up after watchdog termination, like it looks in RocksDB and says which query was executing at this time. Right now, that mechanism only works for scheduled queries and not for live queries. So I don't know. I don't have a good sense for what it would take to do it, but this kind of stuff is on, my mind.
I mean, I could theorize about what it would take, but like my hands aren't in that code.
Yeah. I don't have anything else that really needs to get covered today, so I'm happy to give folks the time back if everyone's gotten to voice anything on their mind.
Well, we're 37 minutes in. No one else has shown up. I think if no one else raises anything, enjoy the remaining 20 minutes.
Yeah, thanks meeting you all.
Yeah, thanks. Nice to meet you, Frank and D. Kim, both of you. Awesome.
See ya next time.
See you.
How often is this happening? Every week? Every 2 weeks? Every month?
2 weeks, fortnightly.
Okay. Cool.
Generally speaking, there's discussion in the Osquery Slack on the office hours channel. There's a little reminder bot.
Oh, okay. Mm-hmm.
So that's to the extent we coordinate. That's it.
Perfect.
All right.
Enjoy your rest of the day. Bye.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye.